So our next guest is Adiba Nelson, and she has a children's book. And as I said, the last three guests tonight are all children's authors. Adiba has a book called Ocean and Me, A Story of Love and Braids. And as she wears braids on the show. So, Adiba, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Okay, do you have a copy of your book
Do I
handy?
have a what?
A copy of Ocean and Me?
Yeah, Oshun, I do have it. Give me 1 second.
Okay, all right. Because I want the cover is actually what drew our attention.
Right
Oh,
here.
that's
Oshun
beautiful.
and me.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
Yes.
it's beautiful work.
Thank you. Thank you. Aliana Harris did a fantastic job.
I was actually talking with um, a client today who's going to be working on a children's book. And
Mhm.
I said one of the most important aspects of a children's book is going to be the illustration. And she said, I remember when we were kids that the illustrations just looked like somebody drew it. I said, it's not like that anymore.
No, it's not.
They're,
No, it is not.
they're very
Not at all.
developed, rich, you know, to the
But they're
point
art.
where they
It's
could
art.
actually, you took the words out of my mouth. They could actually be portraits that you could put on your wall.
Yeah.
Mhm. I told Aliana that there's a few spreads in here that I want just for my house, just to frame because they're so beautiful.
Hmm.
They are very beautiful, and that particular cover is beautiful. Did you go through a lot of iterations before you settled on what you have now? And did you also do a lot of interviewing before you found who you wanted?
So, no and no. I'll
Okay.
start with your second question first. So, I'm very intentional when I am deciding about who I want to work on these projects with me. And so, when I sell a story to a publisher, especially a children's book, they always ask, do you have an illustrator in mind? Do you have a look in mind for what you want these to look like? And I know, being a Black woman writer and an Afro-Latin writer in the business, that we are severely underrepresented, even though there's so many of us out there, right? And so I'm always going to choose to work with an African American or an Afro-Latin or a Latin person to do my illustrations because we just don't get enough of the pie, even though we have so much talent and we're underrepresented. So when they asked me about Oshun and me, I said that I wanted to work with either a Black illustrator or an Afro-Latin illustrator. Um, and I would prefer that it be a female, a woman,
Okay.
specifically because the book is about a little girl and her mom, and there's just every woman who's an adult now remembers Hair Day with their mom when they were younger, and if they have a child now, they know Hair Day with their child now. So I felt the connection would really be there as far as like really bringing forth that warmth and that feeling. And so I told my publisher that I wanted to work with a Black or Afro Latin woman illustrator. They brought me three that they had found on Instagram, and I looked at the three, and Aliana's the richness of her photos immediately jumped out to me. All of her illustrations, if you ever seen any of her work, it just feels like a hug. It always feels just like a
Oh.
warm hug. And so I knew immediately in looking at her work that she was who I wanted to work with. Your first question, which was, did I have to go through a lot of iterations with the illustrations to get to the
Hmm.
final? Not at all.
Okay.
Aliana is a pro. Um, I I sent we sent her the story when all the edits were done and the final product was done. And we said, okay, do your magic. And I had not, I think, I think the only note that I had to give her was about um one of the wheels on Yadira's wheelchair in in the illustrations. Other than that, I had nothing to say. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect.
That's great that you were able to basically strike gold. But I think it's because you did so much prep and you had so much intention prior to going into the process. So it made things easier on the back end.
Yes, but I do want to say I also, not to be woo woo, I don't know what your audience religion or spirituality journeys are, but I always do say, God, let it be what it's going to be. Let the people who need to have their hands on this put their hands on it.
Yes.
Let the people who need to find it find it. I've done my job. The rest is up to you. And so I don't necessarily worry too much when it comes time to put these finished products out because I know that the right people will end up being a part of it.
The illustrator is so important, and I'm glad you were able to find a black female to do your illustrations.
Mhm.
A children's book where I was able to do that too. It was she had to draw sketches from photographs because these were uh, it's about women in business. So she had to take the photographs of the women and turn them into an illustration,
Mm,
which she did an amazing job. And I found her on Freelancer.
hmm
But it's important to have a portfolio of your work that people can access,
hmm hmm
especially when you're in a creative space.
Yeah, I think with Oshun and me, I sent her pictures of styles of braids that I wanted to see in the book.
Oh, okay.
And I
Okay.
sent her pictures of my daughter's wheelchair and my daughter's walker, and then other walker styles that she could choose from to draw. But everything else was her. Everything else was her. And the
Wonderful.
crazy thing is in the back of the book, there's a picture of Yadira's school. And I had never talked to Aliana about what my school looked like growing up, but it is an exact replica of my elementary school.
Wow.
And yeah, it was
Maybe
just
she
one of
did
those
some
things.
research. I don't know.
I mean, there's nothing that would tell you online where I went to elementary school in New York City. So that's
Oh,
why I would say, like, the people's hands who need to be on it will always be on it.
yeah.
Amen.
It's important to connect with the right people when anytime you have any kind of a project because the wrong kind of person can bring the whole thing down. Just
Absolutely.
not necessarily make it topple, but bring everybody's spirits down. If
Absolutely.
have someone involved who's not optimistic and upbeat and who's a solution oriented person,
hmm hmm
not a problem oriented person.
Right.
So, those things are important. Now, who is Ocean and where did Ocean?
Oh, Oshun?
What's the significance of Ocean?
Oshun.
Oshun.
Oshun?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So who is that? Just a totally fictional character? Is
No,
that based on
no.
okay.
No, Oshun is a goddess. She is often found in the spiritual practices of the Yoruba tribe of um, Candomblé, Santeria, Afro-Latin cultures, their
Mm,
spirituality.
okay.
She's one of the goddesses that they worship, that they pray to. She's not made up at all.
Okay. I didn't know if it was a person, a character in the book, if that
Yes,
was
she is a character in the book. It's this
okay.
so Yadira, this little girl, Yadira, she learns about Oshun through her mom doing her hair because her mom always puts cowrie shells in her braids when she does them, and she always puts one right at the center. And so she's
Okay.
asking her mom, well, why do we always put this shell right here? Little kids are like, what? What is this, mom? Why? This is
Right.
weird.
I
Why are
want to
we
be like
doing
everybody else.
Right. And so her mom tells her about Oshun and how Oshun used the cowrie shells to protect her people when the land was dry, and she guided them to food and to water and safety. And so her mom always puts the cowrie shell in the middle, right at the top of her forehead, for protection and safety as she goes through her day. And through learning that story, because Yadira, I don't want to tell the whole story to
Right.
your audience,
Right.
but
Mhm.
Yadira learns to feel comfortable with who she is and how she presents in this world and find her own strength and her own beauty through this story of Oshun and feeling the love and the protection of Oshun around her.
Okay. So it's not just a book about braids.
No,
No,
It's
There's
I
always
like.
layers with my books.
right. I know
I was about
the
to say,
children's
just
book
Oshun is a
have a
story
lot of
within a
layers.
story.
Yes. Yes. It's a story within a story for sure.
That's great. Now, what do people pick up on that? I mean, is it normally like a revelation to parents or educators who reading the book to students or
So
selected?
it depends, if you come from a background that practices Ifa, which is the religion that's practiced in Africa that centers around the Orishas. If your family practices Candomblé or Santeria, Wundun, you know who Oshun is. If you're not of that, I do tell, like if I'm doing a story time, I will explain, the story of Oshun to the kids, even though they're getting it in the book. I will explain a little bit more. Um, there is an author's note in the back of the book, but it really just tells about like why I wrote the book and why I was so driven to write the book. My family is Afro-Latin. Here's the author's note in the back. So if people are curious, they can read that.
Okay.
My family's Afro-Latin. My mom's family's from Puerto Rico. My dad's family. Actually, I just found out that my grandmother on my father's side, so my father's mom, that bloodline has its origins in Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, and Jamaica.
Oh,
And
okay.
so like that side of the family, we're West African. And so it's these things, it's almost ironic that here I am like very curious about this and wanting to learn more. And then on my mom's side, I had an aunt, my titi Aning, who she practiced Santeria, and she was also very Catholic. But the Catholic Church in America didn't acknowledge the cultural
Mm.
spirituality. And so she couldn't kind of have them in the same space. So she had a linen closet where she prayed to all the Orishas. And that's kind of what stirred my curiosity as a kid of like, what's in this closet? Why do you have all these pennies? Why do you have all these cups of water? What's happening over here? What are the feathers about? But no one would tell me. And so as I got older, I started to do some research and talking to cousins. And it was like, oh,
Now
that's
it makes sense.
yeah, now everything makes sense. So that's a big part of like why I wrote this as well, because as a kid, I was very curious, like, what's going on? What is this other thing that Titi Aning is doing? And she's my family member, and I see my cousins like doing stuff, but I don't know what this is. And so I was like,
Right.
maybe there might be other kids out there who their families practice Ifa, practice Santeria, Candomblé, but they don't have any representation, in the world to show the beauty of their culture and their spirituality. And so that's part of the reason that Oshun and Me exists today.
That's awesome. Now, how many books have you published? Because I heard you mention earlier, you said that every time you sell a book to a publisher, so it sounds like you are multi-published.
Yes, this is my third, and I have a fourth one coming out next March. And then we have
Okay.
one out on submission, which means it's with editors trying to see who wants to buy it.
Right.
Right.
And then I'm working on my first fiction novel as well.
Oh, you're a
Okay.
busy lady.
Yeah, I am. This is true. This is true. I have a children's book that I self-published, and that did really well. And then my memoir, which also did well. And then this is the second children's book, but first traditionally published children's book. And then the one that comes out next March is also with Macmillan.
Okay. What was your memoir title?
Ain't That a Mother?
Oh, okay.
Love
Well,
the
Yeah.
name.
It was Ain't That a Mother, Postpartum Palsy, and Everything in Between.
oh wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
you live in Tucson right now.
I do. I do.
And
Oh, that's
so
where my family is.
Oh, they
Yeah,
live here?
my dad and my stepmom live in Tucson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There's only but like 10 of us here, so I probably know them.
I don't know. I bet we could talk and I could start naming a couple of places. It's like, yep, I know them.
Probably, probably.
yeah, we went through Tucson. I'm in Houston, basically.
Oh, okay. I used to live
And
in Houston too.
you used to live in Houston?
I did. I lived in Cyprus and I worked in Baytown.
Oh,
Oh
okay.
wow.
That's west of, well, I think Baytown's like
Baytown's like
east, and
southeast,
it's southeast.
and then
I'm in the
Cyprus is
northwest
northwest.
part of Houston. Not
Okay.
in 1960.
Yeah, just a
Okay.
few
Yes, I know exactly
degrees
where
of
that is.
separation.
Yeah, it is. This we went through Tucson on a road trip from Houston
That's
a
a
few
long
years
drive.
ago, and I tell people if you haven't had a chance to get out and do some road trips and just see this awesome country that we
Yeah.
live in, that is just so amazingly different. It's like, because Arizona looks nothing like Texas.
No, not at
It's
all.
it's not
Not
it's
at
a
all.
whole different. The mountains are different colors. You got desert.
Well,
You have the
my favorite
cactuses.
thing was drive when I drove from, and it was a long drive. Oh my goodness. We drove from Killeen, Texas
Hmm.
to
Okay.
Tucson to visit my dad.
That is a very long drive.
The very long drive. I think it took a day and a half just to get through Texas by itself.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah.
But the interest the interesting part was passing the ghost towns on the side of the road.
Hmm.
Some of these old Western towns were like still there, still standing. Nobody's there, but they're still standing.
Yeah.
And to me, that's always been very interesting. And just to be able to see them, I was a little nervous about stopping there to look closer, but it was nice to drive past them.
Understood. Understood. I'm originally from New York City, but I've been in and out of Tucson for over 30 years.
Mm.
But I'd say Tucson is where I built community. But New York is always going to be home for me.
Okay.
Mm.
We were in New
You
York
probably know
last
my
time.
good sorority sister too.
And I see you're a Z-Fi. I
Oh,
do know
yeah.
some Z-Fis.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Say,
And,
where's your
and
blue?
I want by extension because my daughter's one. So, but it is a beautiful country. What I really just found amazing uh, are it. It looks like the scenery in a Western movie, even on from the interstate. Those mountains that are like orange and brownish,
Yeah.
that area. It looks like it hasn't been touched for like thousands of years. You know,
Arizona is the topography of Arizona is really beautiful. I will absolutely agree with that.
it really is, and it's just different from anywhere else. We hope to go through Montana and Wyoming next year. That's going to be. I've heard that's beautiful country, and
I'm
I've been
sure it
pretty
is.
much everywhere. I haven't driven through like the Midwest. Like I've been to it, but I haven't driven there. Like Illinois and Ohio up there. But it would have to be in the summer for sure. Because the winters are, that's a whole different thing. And it's a lot of mountains in that area too.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
So,
what?
well, I was
Oh
going to
no.
ask about the next book. What were you going to ask about?
Okay.
She has a
Well,
book coming out.
I was gonna ask what's next. So we're
Okay.
basically asking the same thing. So you ask your
Okay.
question.
So your next book, Hazel's Best Day, that
Yes.
comes out in March.
Yes.
And so what is that about? What is this?
Hazel's Best Day. I am so excited about it. Thank you so much for asking me. Hazel's Best Day. Oh, it just warms my heart. Hazel is this little Black girl. She's disabled and she's going to her very first disability pride parade. And she's so excited about it. And on her journey to the parade, you get to see what her community looks like and how accessible the community is for not just folks with disabilities, but for everyone in the community. And
That's
then she gets
beautiful.
to the parade and she sees all the folks with all their varying abilities. And it's just beautiful. And I'm so excited about it. I dreamt Hazel up on just like a spur of the moment thing. And she's so cute and so full of life and energy. Like you can't help but love her as soon as you see the illustration. And it's a completely different illustrator, completely different
Okay.
style of illustration. For Hazel's Best Day, we're using a cut paper illustration style. and
Hmm.
we're using Deanne Wiley, and she is a fantastic, fantastic illustrator. Her book just came out a few months ago called Homegrown. It's a children's book, and she just does beautiful work. But Hazel is just full of spunk and sass and energy and sweetness, and I cannot wait for everyone to meet her.
It sounds like you're describing a real person. It's like you've established relationships with your characters.
I have. And I would say so one thing about me is all of my children's books will always feature disabled children of color
Okay.
because they are never seen in children's books.
Right.
And disabled children of color exist. They're here. They have just as much value as any other child. They deserve to be represented in this world just as much as any other
I
child,
agree.
as any other disabled child. But when you look at disabled children in books, they're typically white or they're animals.
Hmm.
But it's never little Black boys and girls, little Hispanic boys and girls. And my daughter is a little Afro Latin girl who's disabled. And I needed her when she was little to be able to look in a book and see someone that looked like her. And that's how this whole children's book journey got started. And so there's always a little touch of my daughter in every character that I come up with. And my very first book, Meet Clarabelle Blue, was expressly my daughter. I would say
Okay.
Hazel is pretty close to my kid as far as like just the energy that she exudes and the warmth and the joy that she exudes. That personality is definitely my kid. Um, Hazel gets to dress a lot more spunky than my kid because my kid won't let me dress her anymore. So I
Of
have
course.
no say in
I was
that.
gonna ask
Of
how old
course.
she is, and
She's
normally
16.
12, yeah,
She
12 is when that uh
yeah.
realization occurs for
Yeah.
parents. I know it did for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
she's very much about like her combat boots now and her
yeah.
jeans. Although now she's switching to cowboy boots. So I'm just like, ugh, whatever. It's
No,
your
they have their own style. You
it's
have
her
to let,
They
thing.
yeah, you have to let them
Yeah.
explore it. Then
Yeah.
eventually
So
come
do.
back.
I let her do her thing. And she's got a very cute little style. It's very much her.
Yeah.
But I definitely establish a relationship with my characters, even with the fiction novel that I'm working on that I hope to be finished with by this summer. That main character, I've even gotten to be very close to that character. And I feel like sometimes I'm talking to her like, girl, what you gonna do? What's your next step? What are you gonna do now?
Now, is that story going to feature a disabled person as well?
So yes, that story does feature a disability of it's my daughter rolling by. um,
Oh,
Oh,
it deals with mental illness.
okay.
okay.
Yeah, it deals with mental illness. It's a psycho thriller. It's a speculative psycho thriller. Um, and it's really interesting. It's totally different than anything I've ever written. It's definitely not a children's book. I think people are going to be like, whoa, wait a minute. You write soft, fuzzy, warm books. What is this?
And so I was just going to ask, are you writing it under a pen name? And I'm guessing the answer is no.
No, no, it's me. I no, it no, it would be too weird to write it under a pen name. It's just me. I think like who is it? Stacey Abrams is an author and she writes under a
Yes.
pen name. She's a romance novelist. And I
Yes.
was like, I would have never in a million years guessed. So I can see like why she writes under a pen name. But for me, I'm like, I am who I am. I'm just gonna get it like you get it.
There you go.
Yeah. So what gave you the writing bug? When did you know that you wanted to do
Okay,
this?
so if my best friend is watching, she's gonna kill me for sharing the story. Faith, I love you. When we were, I think maybe in junior high, maybe
Hmm.
New Kids on the Block was all the
Yes.
rage. And
Yes.
we would write these stories. Oh my God. We would write these stories about us and New Kids on the Block, like going on tour with them. She would mostly write them, and then I'd read them, and be like, "Oh, let's add this, let's add that." Um, but that was like the first time I was like, "Oh, this is kind of a cool thing." But then we never kept up with it because New Kids fizzled out and we were in high school now. You don't do that in high school anymore. But then I'd say when I was about 15, I got like that teenage angst poetry bug where you write about like I want to burn the whole world down and everything's awful and I hate everybody. And so I started doing that when I was 15 and I had stacks of composition books of just poetry. And then I kept writing poetry into my 20s and I got into spoken word and slam poetry. And I did that for a while. I did that up until I was like maybe 24.
Okay.
And then I went back to school and I stopped writing for a really long time. But then after my daughter was born, I had some really severe postpartum depression that kind of veered into postpartum psychosis. And I
Mm.
started a blog basically. That was when blogging was all the rage.
Mhm.
And I started a blog to just write my way through it. And the way I use like coping skills, for me, humor is a coping skill. And so my blog was called Spit Up is Sexy. And I just blogged my way through my postpartum depression. And an author that you all are probably familiar with, Deneen Milner,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
unbeknownst to me, I have been a huge fan of hers since my early 20s. I had read so many of her books by that point. Unbeknownst to me, she was following my blog. And one day she sent me a message. She's like, "Oh my God, you're so funny, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Wait a minute. Is this the Deneen Milner who wrote this and this and this? And you're a columnist here and here and here?" And she's like, "That's me." And that was kind of the note of like, oh, your favorite author thinks you're a good writer. This is interesting. And I just kind of held that in the back of my head. And then when my daughter was 2, I came out of the postpartum depression. I talk about it in the memoir. Um, and then the blog kind of fell because I was better, if you will.
Mhm.
But then when my daughter was 2, we were looking for children's books where she could see herself in, and there wasn't any. And so I came home and I rage wrote Meet Clarabelle Blue.
Rage
And
wrote it.
Rage
yeah,
Rover.
I rage wrote it because I was so
Oh,
angry that we couldn't find a book that she could see herself in. I just came home and was like, fine, then I'll just write
but
you a
then
book.
you went back and edited and softened it up a little bit, right?
I made Clarabelle Blue very sweet and kind, and the mom was very nice in the book. But I was livid that I could not find a book. The lady at the bookstore showed me a book that had um a disabled like raccoon or something.
Mm,
And I was like,
Oh.
well, my kid's not a raccoon, so no, that's not gonna work. Um,
thank you.
and so that's when I came home and as I call it rage writing, my first children's book, and that started everything.
Rage writing is a thing because my first book was from rage writing. I
Yeah.
never heard it put like that,
It's a
but
thing. It's a
anger
thing.
is a good
Rage,
motivator for certain things.
Yeah.
rage
And it
writing.
can be positive. It can turn into something positive.
I mean
Um,
it got me
it
here.
can
So
I
produce
mean,
something
it can.
positive.
It can.
Yeah, my very first book was based on that. And then I'm in book 15, working on book 16.
oh wow, congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And I never thought I would have more than one book. Once I did that rage writing with the first one and got it out of my system, I never anticipated having another one. But then I got the rest of my books are based on being inspired,
Mm.
you know, not being angry. Any other books being angry, I'm trying to think. But it's mostly inspiration, not. But that first one, anger can be a good motivator if it's channeled correctly.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, show us your cover one more time. Your awesome, beautiful cover of your book one more time.
This is Oshun and Me, and it's also
Oh,
available in Spanish. Ochun y Yo, and it was narrated and translated by Isa Mas.
Hmm.
So you can hear it, an audio version in Spanish as well. and the audiobook is available in English as well. And it's really lovely. Macmillan put music behind it. So there's
Oh,
like some African drumming and some
Oh,
marimba
very
sounds.
nice.
And there's some times
mm,
where you can hear the shells with Yadira running her fingers through her shells. You can hear the
It's a whole
rain.
immersive experience.
It's really beautiful.
okay. Well, though that cover is awesome.
Here, I'll hold it
It
one more
says it
time.
all.
Shameless
It
plug.
says
There
it
you go.
all. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being a guest on the show, and congratulations on your previous books, this one, and your future ones.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, ladies.
Thank
Okay,
you. You have a great night and best wishes to you and good luck on the new release.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
you
You too.
too.